All right, this is going to be exciting. Chelsea, welcome to the Leaders Who Care series.
Thank you for having me, Mark. I'm so excited to be here.
Well, I'm glad you're excited. I'm excited that people are going to see, it's kind of like the show me stage. You're going to show them why you are on a Leaders Who Care series, all for good reason. Place to start, as always, is if you can briefly introduce us to Chelsea. Um, And I got to say this is usually more to guys than gals, if you will. We'll get into the business stuff and whatever in a minute. But about you, where you're originally from, where you're from now, family, siblings, whatever about family. Tell us a little about that. Tell us if something you've never told anybody that you might want to reveal to the world now. That's always fun. So a little bit about who are you?
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you so much for having me on the show. I have really enjoyed getting to know you and then participating in Leaders Who Care over however long it's been, last many, many months now, and just really taken with your work. So it's a pleasure to be here.
Thanks.
Like you said, my name is Chelsea Myers. Originally, I'm from Arizona, currently in the Midwest, and now looking at property out in the West. So maybe we'll do tea in person sometime soon.
Nice.
Um, let's see. I am a creative. I'm a visionary and entrepreneur. I am
Um,
passionate about building meaningful, scalable solutions that elevate human potential. So
Okay,
my
I'm going to
work,
stop you for a second because I'm really
yeah,
good at interrupting. Um,
yeah,
Tell us if you don't mind about your family and stuff.
yeah, sure. So I'm the oldest of four children.
Mhm.
And so, like I said, I grew up in Arizona, and my parents were high school sweethearts. My dad was actually born in Italy. My grandma's from Italy. Grandpa met grandma when he was in the service over in Italy, and so they came here when dad was growing up, and he met my mom, high school sweethearts, and got married right out of high school. And here I am.
Nice. They did a good job then. Are your siblings in where are they all?
Yeah, my entire family is actually still in Arizona.
Mhm.
Yeah, when I said entire, I had to double check myself. All of them. Yep, all my siblings. Mom is there. Um, we'll probably talk about it later. Dad passed when I was 16, but uh,
And what
yeah,
about kids, nieces, nephews?
yes. So I have kids. I have four boys, and then I'm super excited. I've become an aunt over the last several years, multiple times, and so that's really fun. We actually just did Christmas out in Arizona for the first time. I hadn't been there for Christmas in 15 years. So it was really fun to do that now with the next generation all involved and be able to share those traditions with our kids.
That's pretty good. I remember talking, you got boys, four
Mm-hmm.
boys, right? And I got
Four
three
boys.
boys and a bonus daughter. So we were talking about that. And you're homeschooling now, right?
We are. So what's
You did
really
that.
neat is my our oldest, I was involved in a project in the public education sector for about 8 years. And that project allowed me to be very involved in his education and have a lot of choices that many parents may not have. And so I saw a lot of really great things. And then when we started having more kids, we just went back to the drawing board and we're like, okay, what is really important? What do we want our kids to have access to first and foremost? What do we want to be the emphasis of their education? And then what would we like to be maybe different or maybe not included in that? And so we came to the conclusion after lots of thought about it that homeschooling would be the way to go. And that's what we've done and couldn't be happier.
Yeah, we did it too with two of my boys because they were acting in sports and everything, so it became easier. And there was pros and cons to
Mm-hmm.
the whole thing as there are with everything, but it really gets you connected with what's going on with school, obviously, because you're doing it. And they loved it. At some point they wanted to get back into school. And so they went to a school that was actually for actors and sports athletes and whatnot because of time stuff and everything. But yeah, it really lets you take the lead, you know.
It does. Yeah, I met a guy yesterday. He had reached out to me on LinkedIn. I actually know his dad through one of the companies that I have, but uh, he's now working for his family company. And I was just so impressed with him, Mark, the way that he was communicating with me, the questions he was asking. He's very, very young. And I learned that he was homeschooled. And so I was probing him. I'm like, what was that like for you? And you're obviously very comfortable and confident connecting with strangers and having very intelligent conversations. Talk to me about what did your parents do to supplement that? So I'm curious, what did you guys do? How did you make
Yeah,
sure
well,
that they got the important socializing and relationship management?
they got a lot of the socializing from sports. They were
Mm-hmm.
always involved in sports and even from acting and stuff. So they were around people. So that was good.
Yeah.
Um, we did have someone even help us also, who was an actor, but she was great at helping take care of the kids and teach also. So we got help there, which is privileged in itself, obviously, to be able to afford that and everything that a lot of people can't. And it wasn't easy because, it's not like we knew everything we were teaching either,
Yeah.
that type of thing. And as they get older, it gets even harder, that. And so, but it was, but it was really being close to them and being involved. That was great. And, and like I said, there's pros and cons to all of it. And, I think I think they've all turned out pretty good, even though my bonus daughter is my favorite of my three boys. So so that's that. Um,
Well, that's the way
um,
that goes sometimes.
yeah, and I'm just kidding. No, not really, actually, maybe. I don't know. So we're talking about kids. So what was Chelsea like as a kid and then a teenager? I'm trying to think, were you an explorer? Were you reader, movies, sports? What were you like?
Yeah, well, that's kind of a loaded question because it has a lot to do with who I am now, of course, like all of us. But from the outside looking in, I did a lot of the things that you might expect. I was involved in music, specifically piano. I did take guitar lessons for a brief period of time, but I studied piano much longer. I've always loved classical music. I did dance, and I've always loved anything with artistic expression. So whether that was making clothes out of paper grocery bags, or
Wow.
make currently, like, one of my hobbies is making wreaths. I just really love putting things together, interacting with the materials, and making something beautiful. um, but what is interesting that I was going to share on that was, when I was young, I had a near death experience, and I don't remember much about that experience. But what has stayed with me my whole life was this feeling that I had during that time of absolute and total bliss. It was joy, and it was peace, and it was happiness. And as a child at that time, I attributed that blissful feeling, that experience, to being in the hospital. So I was actually in no hurry to leave. But the feeling that I had there, it's never left me. And it's always been a part of me, and a part of me that deeply desires to return to that state, to find a sustainable way to feel bliss and peace and happiness and joy. And in so many ways, and some that we'll get into today, I've spent a lot of my life experimenting with how to create that feeling again for myself and for other people in healthy and beautiful ways. So,
Yeah, that's amazing because I find, and there's a reason I asked that question. Number one, I'm interested because I like kids, and number two, there's some usually an inflection point or something that happens as a kid, or a few things that happen that somehow end up creeping back or constantly back, or anyway they're back when you get to be an adult. I find
mm-hmm.
there's a
Yeah.
thread, and sometimes it's not a long straight linear thing, but it's pivoting all over the place, but it seems to come back. And
Mm-hmm.
and that would prove it too. And if it happens for a reason, I do believe things happen for a reason. So that'd be fascinating to see how this ties through, because that's pretty powerful. That feeling that you're talking about, that you absolutely are striving, and it's deep in your soul. You want to get that back.
Right.
So
Right. I mean, it's just so beautiful. It's just pure joy, pure love. And so and I want to feel that. And I know other people want to feel that. A lot of us spend a lot of our life trying to figure out how to feel that. And
exactly. It's true, because why are we here in the first place? Is it to work?
mhm,
I don't think so. I don't think that's why we're here. So
right.
we want to be happy. Well, let's start like early on. I want to make sure I get this right, a business development specialist with Wells Fargo.
Hmm.
Somehow, with all due respect to Wells Fargo, that doesn't seem like the bliss that you were looking for. What were you envisioning at the time?
Yeah, well, you know what? If I could backpedal just a little bit. So when I was growing up, I also, something that has, woven through all of these experiences we're going to talk about, I also began to realize that I saw the world in what seemed to be a unique way, especially people and nature.
Mhm.
Meaning, I could hear what was being said, but also what wasn't being said. I could see the truth behind people's words and even like sense or see things that people didn't want to be seen. And that I remember that became really clear to me for the first time when I was about 4 or 5. My dad and I were at the gas station, and I remember seeing a man looking at the snacks, but what I really saw was this dark energy, this dark frequency that he was carrying. And it was heavy and it was unsettling. And I was so mesmerized, Mark, because I had never been around that type of energy, I guess. So I remember hiding around the snack rack and kind of peeking out to look at him. And when he caught my eye, we both knew that something had happened. He knew that he'd been seen in a way that most people didn't see him. And I knew that I had just witnessed something powerful about the way that I experienced the world. So I grew up with that level of sensitivity, often kind of feeling like a little on the outside looking in, and often like an observer of human behavior, kind of watching the way people would interact. And it actually did make socializing a little bit laborious for me and a little bit confusing and unfulfilling, because I was longing for real connection and communication about the magical and mystical things of the world, or at minimum to talk about what was real. And what I noticed was that a lot of people aren't sharing what's real. It seemed to be kind of surface level or fluffy stuff. And I just didn't understand that. And so, to distract from some of the confusion about that human experience, and then also to take my mind off of some things that were out of my control and very heavy in my upbringing, um, causing a strong sense of responsibility that I was neither equipped for or prepared for as a child. I found myself diving into things where effort had a clear reward, like excelling in school or practicing my dance turns endlessly, trying to earn those gold stars. Um, but what I was really doing was looking for something outside of myself to fix the lack of fulfillment and loneliness and heavy weights, from some of the other things going on inside. And so this definitely leads into what I was drawn to, emotionally and spiritually as I grew older. Now, when those types of things didn't work, the overdoing things didn't work, I turned to something else, disconnecting entirely.
Is
And
there something going on with our eyes? Because we're both blinking our eyes
oh,
at the
I think
same
so.
time.
Yeah, it's springtime. Yeah, everything's in the air. It's very windy here. I was actually pleased that we had uh, power, because they started to flicker. The light started to flicker before we got on. But
No, but that was just based on what you were talking about. It just hit me. We're
we're
both
both
doing the
crying. This is a
same.
very
It's
emotional
very
part of the
emotional.
story.
Yes, it is. It can be, but anyway. Sorry. Go ahead. This is great.
No, no, you're fine. Well, around the time of junior high, I started experimenting with drugs and alcohol. And for the first time, I didn't have to feel as much of the weight of the things that were out of my control. And I didn't have to feel, when other people's choices or their versions of reality were emotionally intense. I didn't have to feel like I was so different from being able to see and feel the world the way that I do. I could just kind of turn it off. And for clarification, that didn't mean that I necessarily wasn't aware of the things. It's just that I had a dulling mechanism so they didn't have the same
Right.
impact.
Right.
And we now know that intelligence doesn't just live in our brain. We have receptors in our hearts and in our guts. And so those substances created temporarily a disconnection between head, heart, and gut that gave me some relief, but did create a whole new level of chaos. And then when I was 16, I came home from school and found my mom and uncle sitting there, and they told me that my dad had died in a car accident. And without a handbook on how to process unexpected loss of a parent, I did what you might expect someone who's already numbing pain. I numbed more. And that was a solution, until it became a really big problem. And luckily, I was able to access supports and get onto another trajectory. And during that time, I was able to ask myself some really important questions, like, how do I want to think and believe about death? How do I want to be during loss? How do I want to move through chaotic and unexpected times? And being able to do that work has allowed me to serve others in a lot of ways, not by helping them, because I don't ever think of my clients or the customers we serve as, broken or needing help, but by illuminating what's already within them and connecting them to their own inner strengths. Because what I know is that when we hold space for someone to truly be able to see themselves, to feel seen and safe, um, and powerful in their own right, this is where transformation happens.
Sure. That's awesome. And was Wells Fargo a numbing, or was it a transformation?
Yeah, good question. So here's how that leads to Wells Fargo. So my parents had always, I told you my dad moved here from Italy when he was growing up, and they got married right out of school. Both parents entered the workforce immediately, without going to college. And so we always had enough and even more than enough. But it was a struggle. Money was hard. My parents worked very hard. There was a lot of stress around that. And so they did a really good job of supporting us in figuring out what we were good at and encouraging us to seek education outside of high school. And specifically in my case, I heard a lot of encouragement to either be a doctor or a lawyer, because those were career paths that my parents viewed as ones that would have created a little more comfort in their lives and things that maybe matched my skill sets.
Mm-hmm.
Well, so I'm hearing that and, digesting that over several years. But I also had heard the term entrepreneur from an uncle of mine, before I even knew what that word meant. But I had this visceral response to it. And something about the frequency of that word resonated with me on such a deep and soul level. I just knew it was important for me. And I now look back and know why that is, because for me, being a visionary isn't just about creating personal freedoms. It's about creating better outcomes, more meaningful connections, deeper impacts, all those things. But with Wells Fargo, I'm trying to balance, here's my parents'
Right.
recommendations and here's what I'm feeling inside. And I went ahead and studied business finance. Numbers have always come very easy to me. So that was an easy degree for me to pick. And it seemed to kind of hedge my desire to step into entrepreneurship one day. And so I took a role at Wells Fargo Bank, which is a beautiful position for me because of the experiences that I had had up to that point and the way that I see the world. I was leading the rollout of some tech solutions, and the team that I was working with had, in some cases, been in their roles longer than I'd been alive. So you can imagine it wasn't exactly the warm and fuzzy embracing of me coming along telling them we're going to change everything. But I remember having, a couple weeks into it, there was a lot of what appeared to be resistance and opposition. And I just had like this moment, and I'm like, wait a minute, this isn't what's really going on. And so I just listened. And when I really listened, not just to what they were saying, but what they weren't saying, I could see that they weren't resisting me. They were afraid. They were afraid of being displaced by technology. This is not a scenario that's even foreign today, right? This is happening now. They were afraid of losing their place in the company, not knowing if they'd be able to adapt. And I realized that if I was going to roll this out successfully, that I couldn't just focus on the process. I needed to focus on the people executing it. And that was such an incredible experience. It taught me something fundamental, that real leadership isn't about forcing change. It's about guiding people through it. And when we do that, we're able to create meaningful relationships. And some of these people, this was over 20 years ago, are ones that I'm still in contact with. So it ended up really beautiful.
Yeah, I can totally relate. You're talking my language. And with Deloitte, and then getting into, then I had leaders who care along my career about putting me in the directions that they felt they knew that what would be best for me, which was best for me,
Mhm.
rather than just sticking, let's say, to accounting or this or that or whatever type of thing. So I can totally get that. It's great that you had, I love the fact that you used experiences too, because I like that word better than background. It's background's a nice background, and it includes experiences, but what we really want is experiences, in business and in life, not just a background type of thing.
Right.
So right on there. And it's interesting because we found that our firm on the premise that leaders in organizations, whatever the organization it may be, will always do better when doing good. And it clearly seems, and especially since you've told me some of your background, that you're an early understander, if you will, of all that, from all sorts of different perspectives. And could you talk a little bit about how your path evolved, where you started as I get this right, a neurodivergent education specialist, or at least at one point you
Oh,
were there, and how it evolved to that, and what that meant, what you did, and what were the experiences of that?
yeah. So I had, like I said, I had studied business finance and did that big project at Wells Fargo Bank, and that was really beautiful. And in that process, came across the term professional coaching. I was told that's what I was doing to manage this
Right.
change so successfully. So I started doing some research on that and ended up continuing my studies in human behavior and motivation. So I was ready for something new. I was wanting to make a bigger impact, and I was struck by curiosity one day when one of my clients came in, and as we were getting to know each other, and I shared a little bit about what I was doing at Wells, and she told me about her work in the public education sector. One thing led to another, and soon I found myself in North Texas, sitting in for an interview for a role focused on revitalizing and developing, excuse me, a program primarily for neurodivergent and emotionally complex students. And what drew me to this opportunity, much like my previous role at Wells Fargo, was I'd be doing the same thing here, rolling out something brand new and having a heavy role in developing it, but in the service of the next generation. And not just any students, but a population that at that time was even less understood than they are today. And I wasn't just supporting them, I was supporting the educators, the administrators, and the professionals who cared for them in the school setting. So I worked alongside the legal team, the school leadership, the mental and emotional health professionals, and um, with the support of an incredible team, I built what became a very effective and meaningful program in mainstream educational settings who have unique learning processing and emotional needs. And the program was a huge success. After a couple of years, I was invited to Europe to present our results and continue researching there for a bit. And um, it was a moment that affirmed something really important to me, and that is the precious and formative minds and hearts of our children. And more than ever, children today are inundated with messaging and stimuli and distractions and pressures. And because of the way that I perceive people, their energy, their deep truths, I could see that a lot of these kids that we were serving were carrying burdens far beyond their years. Some were carrying pain that had been passed down for generations. Some were dealing with heavy trauma from their home lives. And there wasn't a really good system in place to teach them how to navigate it or even process those emotions that they were coming to school with. And so a core focus of that program became helping them to recognize, allow, and process their emotions, giving them tools to regulate their nervous systems and create an internal environment that they could operate in, at least with more ease. And so we work to equip them with skills to navigate not just their own growth, but also the increasing pressures of family and school and society, pressures that were often compounded by the heightened sensitivities that come with neurodivergence and emotional sensitivity.
Mm-hmm.
So that was a very, very rewarding experience for me. I think the most rewarding thing was witnessing the children find a sense of peace and power within themselves, perhaps for the first time.
How interesting that you're looking for this place of peace and bliss, and there you're giving it to somebody else right there.
Isn't that so interesting? I heard someone say, I wish I could remember exactly the quote, but it was something along the lines of like your deepest struggle is where you find your greatest gift to share or your greatest contribution to the world. And
Yeah,
yeah,
and it's why we learn so much from kids too, in a way, versus us thinking we're teaching them. There's a lot to learn
yeah,
from them, and from neurodivergent, or and kids with autism, kids with different things, or adults even. There's so much. Every single person in the world has a value to them. They have value to give, and we miss out if we don't bring out that value for us. Even selfishly, we miss out by don't bringing out that
Yeah.
value. Not to mention what we're doing to help them. So is that why you moved on to robots after that?
Good question. Okay, so I finished the project. It was a success. Came back from Europe, and I'm like, okay, what do I want to do now? Do I want to keep doing this? And I was making a significant impact, and I was very glad to have put that program in place. But I was operating in the public education sector within some bounds that weren't set by me, and I have this deep desire to continue making a difference and an entrepreneurial drive.
So you were
And in my
working with human robots and then you went to real robots. Is that what
yeah,
you're saying?
yeah, yeah, I'm getting there. All right. So,
I'm getting
uh, so
there. Okay.
in my spare time, I had begun coaching some doctors, mostly in person and through email at that time, nights and weekends, just from our social circle and people that I'd met in the community. And as I was working with them, not unlike the things I was working with the students on, I actually noticed they had a lot of the same things going on: insecurity, struggle, emotional dysregulation. And so I had one foot in the door with dental, and I decided, you know what? I want to own practices. So I partnered in several and we expanded to multiple states. We had a dental lab with some robots. The primary function of the robots, we were printing clear aligners, like straighten teeth. And honestly, it was a pretty exciting time. But through all of that, one thing that remained close to my heart was the development, the human component of the doctors and the teams. And so that's when Dental Life Coach was born. And as my practices grew and my leadership development company expanded, we made the decision to slowly exit practice ownership, allowing me to fully invest in Dental Life Coach. And that's been an incredible journey working with truly beautiful people. And during this time, I also started the Brain Crops podcast, which you're familiar with. And it originally was more of a private show, actually, for my dental clients, just to let them know, hey, you're not alone in your struggles. These are human struggles, not you specific or dentist specific. These are human things. And as the show grew, I began collaborating with other visionaries and working with private client entrepreneurs outside of dentistry, and started inviting a wider range of guests, people with unique life journeys who have made meaningful impacts on a lot of people. You should come on the show, Mark. Actually, this is public and
Invite.
sincere invitation. I would love to have you.
No, I'd love to be on. Now it's called Brain Crops, right?
Yeah, the Brain Crops podcast. Yeah. And so it's just been really inspiring to hear their stories and watch this evolve. I've just had the privilege of sharing so many beautiful stories of exceptional individuals. And what stands out to me the most in that is, um, we all have a deeper sense of inner power beyond awards, beyond financial success, beyond the clubs that we're in or the places we vacation, and being able to hear what is important to each person. It is really so beautiful and inspiring, and the paths we take to get there. And so that's been really neat.
Yeah, it's yeah, I've always felt that we must have known each other in previous lives or something, I think. I'm not sure, but I've always felt that line that everybody has value and you just got to help them. It's help them with a hand up, not a hand out, as you say, type of deal. And of course, at the end of the day, the core, it seems like everybody wants almost the same thing. It might be in a different way,
Mhm.
but everybody wants the same thing. That bliss feeling that you talked about, or whatever it may be, a calmness. And um, do you find like you work with, and I'm going to quote here, I guess, coaching conscious ultra high net worth leaders too, correct? Um,
Yeah.
any specific experiences without giving names that stood out for you that you maybe are especially proud of what happened?
Yeah. You know, what I love about working with change makers is that these leaders, when something shifts, it doesn't just shift for them, it shifts, for them, their family, but the ripple effects are so large because sometimes of the organizations or platforms or the number of people that they're interacting with that will always be impacted by whatever's going on in their world. And so one particular experience, as you were saying, that stands out was a client who had achieved a lot of financial success, but was struggling with a sense of fulfillment. And so, in working together, he started tapping into his inner strength, expanding consciousness, and really aligning his actions with a higher purpose that he was able to identify. And he was able to transform his leadership approach. And when he did that and started connecting deeply with his team and leading with more empathy, he began to create initiatives that benefited entire communities. And I'm really proud of these types of transformations because they're not just about the financial outcomes, they're about the world. And these it's about leaving legacy and guiding teams to operate from a place of alignment and purpose and creating their ripple effects that are far beyond the business.
Yeah, I love that. In our business where we get retained, a big part of business we get retained to find like the best talent to go into our clients, and where we represent our clients as leaders who care, and those are the type of people the best candidates want to work with and work for. And but I've always had the feeling, because I've seen the impact that you're talking about, of when you talked about earlier in life, it was the uncle that talked to you that somehow
Mm-hmm.
came up about entrepreneurship. Um, a lot of people, even myself, we didn't have entrepreneurial conversations in the house. I found it outside type of thing. And a lot of
Mm-hmm.
young people don't get that conversation in the house. And what I have found, when we put people into opportunities that they love, um, the husband, the wife, the spouse, the partner, whatever comes home, and a lot of times they could say to the point, work sucks. I'm bored. I don't know what we're doing there. We don't make a difference anywhere. Give me a beer. I'm going to watch whatever. Or
Mm-hmm.
they come home and say, hey guys, let's all sit together. I got to tell you what happened. We're doing some stuff with a food bank next weekend. My boss talked to me about a program I can get a bigger bonus on, and really da and this and that. And the kids hear in all of that and more, and it really does impact them too. And then it goes into the community because they talk to their friends. So everything you're saying is so right on. Not that it wouldn't be, but it's so right on, about the impact that is made that way, because that's where the kids learn initially. So that's great stuff that you're doing. And I want to ask you, one thing we say about in LA here is got to leave them wanting more so that we can do a sequel. So we may have to do that type of thing. But the fourth industrial revolution is pretty well defined as technology and mostly AI. Um, but the fifth they're talking about is whoever they are, that it's humanity. Have you returned to your passion, by creating quantum personal transformation? And again, talk about a little bit about the meditation that you have, which by the way, I love the videos that you post. I love and don't love because I get stuck on them, basically, all the time, because there are amazing things going on around the world, right? But talk about, as we talked about, it starts as a kid and there's a thread, and everything we're talking about, how it keeps, the impact people have on each other, and lifting people up. Have you returned to your passion by what you're doing, and how it's so important in the world right now, especially for children?
Oh my gosh. Yes. Each of the companies that I've built are beautiful in their own right and a great representation of who I was at the time that I was building them.
Hmm.
And you and I talked last year when I was in a bit of a transition. I'd automated some things and then was kind of trying to figure out, okay, what do I want to do? What do I want to do now? And really just seeking that deeper purpose, those same things that I'm working with my private clients on. And I was in deep meditation and prayer about this. And I'm like, all right, my gifts and talents. What do you want me to do? How do I make the biggest impact? And oh my gosh, if I didn't get the strongest download. So I'll answer. That's actually two parts to your question. Quantum Upgrade Personal Transformation was a project that I did. And actually, that felt very much like an intuitive direction. And the first time I heard that direction, you need to build this program, I was like, what? And the response or the answer came again, you need to build this program. So I did. In under 5 days, I wrote the program. Under 10, we had it professionally, videoed, produced, got it back. It's in a beautiful platform. It's helping a lot of people. What that is, was a response to the unique needs of some of my private clients who were struggling with addiction, particularly in the area of pornography. And as we all know, that's a very sensitive issue, one that's accompanied by a lot of shame and isolation, especially among high performing individuals who can't just or feel that they can't just say what's going on in their minds and hearts without having a lot of eyes on it. And so that program provides discrete on demand support that allows individuals to address those challenges from the comfort of their homes and helping them um, break free from a cycle that's holding them back. And as meaningful as that work is, back to me asking God, what do you want me to do with my gifts and talents? What is my purpose? Like you were talking about earlier, what can I do here? I have always had it very close to my heart and been drawn to supporting children. A lot of that's, my own things growing up and looking back and now being able to see and doing my own inner child work on a regular basis, what would have benefited Chelsea back then. A lot of that is having my own children. Some of that's from the work in public education. But kids are up against a lot. And so it's driven me to create mediTEAtion, which is a movement designed to help children connect with their true selves, embrace their uniqueness, and build inner strength from a really young age. Our world is filled with noise and distraction and overwhelm, and it makes it more and more important every day for children to be able to find calm and clarity and connect with themselves. And through that, it allows them to tap into their divine inspiration and feel and trust their intuition and find comfort and strength no matter what's going on around them. So mediTEAtion is not just a product, although there are going to be physical products that you can buy. It's about giving them the tools that they need to navigate the complexities of life with confidence and self-awareness.
Yeah, I love that. And I think you may have heard him, a friend of mine, Sam Beard. He's worked with 6 presidents, and he has this organization called Gift Connect that they work with teaching parents on from birth to 3 years old, what those kids are absorbing and learning, and a foundation for the rest of it. It doesn't mean you're done at 3, but there's a
Right.
lot. But it's all this is so important, and we it's funny. We all feel better when we have our feet on the ground and we figure there's a home base and there's a foundation. And it's kind of what you're talking about is giving them the tools, gives them a foundation to be strong and handle obstacles. There's going to be lots of obstacles and struggles and whatnot, but you can end up handling them. And kids want it. They
Mm.
want it. They may not tell you they want it necessarily, but they do want it. So yeah, favorite topic. And I learned a lot of that in sports, and I still utilize sports both as analogies and getting kids involved, like my own in sports to learn a lot of that. And so it's great. It's great work that you're doing, and keep the videos going because they totally entertain me all the
You
time.
bet.
Um,
Bet.
um, last question here is a client told me way back in 2021, he said, Mark, 2020 was the year that flew by slowly. And I thought it was great. And because even today we look at the pandemic year as like it was yesterday and years ago, all at the same time. With all that, and we're fast and furious now into 2025, with so many things happening, like talk about
Mhm.
overload. Um, what are you most grateful for, and what are you most hopeful for?
Oh, that's a good question. So, what I'm most grateful for looking back was the opportunity to deepen my understanding of what truly matters. We all had the opportunity to take our emotional temperature, assess the reading, and determine what we needed to do to be in better emotional shape. And the value of connection and mindfulness and how critical it is for children to have that strong emotional foundation to thrive on was very clear to me. And what I'm most hopeful for as we surge ahead in 25 is that we continue to create a world where children aren't just surviving, but comfortable and confident and leaning into their uniquenesses because the world needs them. I'm also incredibly grateful for the partnerships that will form this year, the new opportunities to scale, and the chance to build an even stronger support system for kids who need it most around the world.
That's awesome. Well, I'm grateful for having a really new good friend. That's what I'm grateful for, and that you are a leader who cares. And I think I'm hopeful for the same reason. That you are that, and because I love children, and they're always the future, and even to the point where we're bringing 8 to 18-year-olds on this podcast as well. And we stopped calling them the future leaders who care because they've become the present future leaders who care at the way it's going right now. So thanks for all of that and all you do and for being on the Leaders Who Care series.
Yeah, thank you so much. And yeah, I've had the opportunity to sit in on some of the calls with these young entrepreneurs, and they are doing absolutely incredible things. So thank you for the work that you're doing too. It is incredibly impactful, and this has been a pleasure.
I love it. A mutual admiration society. Thanks.
Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.